256 acres, all in one swoop. So this was my old farm. I don't come by it often because it kind of hurts.
April 14th, 1999. U.S. District Court Judge for the District of Columbia, Paul L. Friedman, ruled in favor of the African American farmers in the monumental Pigford versus Glickman case. Defining discrimination can be tricky. Even trickier can be arguing a case of discrimination in a court of law. Yet this is exactly what was done in the Pigford versus Glickman case, where African American farmers filed a class action lawsuit against the USDA, accusing the USDA of racial discrimination in the dispersal and allocation of farm loans and credit.
You know, the fact that I think 65 to 70% of all of the claims were approved, it just showed that there had been such a massive amount of discrimination.
The Pigford case was followed by the In re Black Farmers case, commonly known as Pigford 2. The applications of more than 60,000 people were not considered in Pigford 1 because they were submitted after the deadline. The large number of late applications indicated that there may have been some issue in the notification process of Pigford 1, and consequently, Pigford 2 was opened.
They would advertise like in the Jet magazine. That was a black publication. But what farmer gets Jet magazine? Not very many. And they would do a TV advertisement at 2 or 3 o'clock at night.
In the 2008 Farm Bill, Congress included provisions that permitted claimants in Pigford 1 who submitted a late request and had not received a determination on their claims to bring a new civil action to court. Subsequently, multiple lawsuits were filed which were consolidated into a single case, Pigford 2. Approved claimants most often receive $50,000 in relief and loan forgiveness. How did we get here? What history do these cases emerge from? In order to situate the present within the context of the past, let us revisit some of the past events and policy decisions that led up to the Pigford cases. Let us start in 1862, when Lincoln signed the USDA into law.
Somewhere, with someone on the job, everything we have is started. Somewhere, on some fertile acre, the plow knifes through soil that abounds in promise. And the farmer, although he plows alone, is not alone. His life is tied in with the lives of many others, of all of us who depend on him and on his mechanized labors. And he, in turn, depends on all of us.
January 1865. The bloody Civil War is coming to a close, and General William T. Sherman releases Special Field Order No. 15, 40 acres and a mule. This promise of 40 acres of land and an animal with which to plow it came at the right time for the 4 million newly free former slaves struggling to get a foothold in their new lives. Unfortunately, this order was not to be carried out, as the assassination of President Lincoln saw Andrew Johnson enter office and order the land be returned to its previous owners. The broken promise of 40 acres and a mule marks the beginning of a long trail of inadequate, undersupported, and discriminatory policy attempts, a cycle which continues even today. Next, we move to 1933 and the New Deal.
I, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, do solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. So help me God.
An impressive amount of legislation was passed in this period. Legislation which was to assist and regulate the agricultural sector of the United States. Again, policy failed to benefit black farmers. In fact, legislation in this period ultimately led to a decrease in the number of black farmers.
Next, FDR focuses national attention on the plight of the nation's farmers.
I ask the Congress for measures to increase the purchasing power of our farmers and to relieve the pressure of farm mortgages. Unprecedented conditions call for the trial of new means to rescue agriculture.
One example of an unsuccessful policy attempt from the New Deal era is the 1933 Agricultural Adjustment Act. The USDA was responsible for overseeing the AAA, but its programs were administered on a local level by county committees. County committees were made up of local farmers and had a lot of power. Unfortunately, many African Americans were denied the right to vote for their county committeemen. County committees were ultimately not very representative of their counties, with a majority of members being white landowners. Issues of discrimination and unequal representation by county committees of their constituents continue today, as do failed attempts by the U.S. government to rectify these issues of discrimination through policy.
I still think there is this structural issue with the county committee that still a lot of African Americans are participating in the advisory capacity and not as a full-fledged member. It is true that depending on your personality in these communities, you could get things moving in that capacity, but given the long history of entrenched racism and people centrally knowing their places, by putting African Americans not on an equal footing with the county committee membership, I think that's disempowering. I think it works in some places, but most places, I think there's still a lot of structural issues with that.
I participate, but one voice to, 100 other farmers or 1,000 farmers, it's nothing happens. And even the minority delegate that they offer, but all they are an advisor and they're a non-voting member. So what good is it to sit there, on the county committee and you have no power or no, force or word whatsoever?
When Lincoln created the USDA in 1862, he said it was the People's Department. But today, thanks to the history of discrimination, the USDA has come to be viewed by many as the last plantation. This discrimination has become much more evident in the past 20 years due to increased documentation. The Pigford cases in particular brought some of the ongoing discrimination to light.
Still fighting for their 40 acres and a mule, the plight of black farmers.
It's been more than a decade since black farmers filed a lawsuit against the U.S. Department of Agriculture because of decades of discrimination.
When Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves, they had no skills, and it was his plan to give each black farmer 40 acres and a mule where they could make a living. Well, Abraham Lincoln got assassinated, and his plan was dethroned. So no one was given the 40 acres and the mule.
Discrimination comes in a variety of forms, some more obvious than others. The discrimination black farmers face from the USDA is no exception.
Richard Grant went to a meeting on a foreclosure of his farm and met an agent who was in full Confederate regalia, the pin and the tie pin, indicia of really how he felt about black farmers in that area.
Yes, I'm going to show you where I was born in 1941, 7:30 that morning. So they say. Okay, we all can jump in the truck here. We may have to push the stuff around in the back. Well, it was kind of rough because number one, they're going to make you a loan. And you need that money like this time of year here now. Your crop got to be planted in March and April. I get money in May, in May. So what you do then, you don't have the money to buy the seed, the fertilizer and stuff like you're supposed to. And you just hope and pray, you just put the seed in the ground, but then at the end of the year, you start coming up short because you didn't put stuff to it that you should have. You know? There wasn't no easy toss.
There was a massive level of injustice in that for the African American farmers, in that particular case, USDA was able to counter every single claim. So you would file as a farmer, what your complaint was, and the Department of Agriculture was able to review it and give alternate information, but you couldn't answer their alternate information. So they might say, oh, there maybe was discrimination, but you have to compare it to a similarly situated white farmer. So, in that case, some of the farmers that had the most records at USDA, and probably some of, the really worst losses, they lost their cases because USDA countered those. There was in that case an appeals process, and so some of that damage was repaired, but even still, the farmers lost their rights forever in that process.
I filed. They say I wasn't discriminated. They claim I got my loan when I supposed to got it. It was just them words against mine, I guess.
The county committee and Farm Services Agency were at the epicenter.
We don't have the level of representation of ethnic community input. The county committee is a very systemic and dysfunctional system. It doesn't seem to work for us.
And some of these workers wrote their own rules. They set their own rules and they carried out their own rules.
And that was the good old boy system.
They tell you there's no money. They tell you they're not taking applications now. What they don't tell you is that even if there's no money, that there's going to be a period of time where your money is coming in. They don't tell you that unless you have a relationship with them. My father would come and I had to fill out the application on his behalf, where the white farmer would have his application already filled out by the staff. Not only did he get that personal service, but he would get a call from the staff and say, Mr. Smith, we have new money available, and it's happening now.
These agents of the government that discriminated against black farmers have continued to have their jobs, be employed. Some of them by now probably have reached the age of retirement. They have their pensions.
There has been no consequences to those who act in that manner.
The part that bothers me, USDA does not reprimand. No consequence.
Black farmers are still being denied. Those few, and I emphasize few, who are trying to get loans to work their crops, they're being turned down saying they have bad credit or their loans won't cash flow. Why do they have bad credit? Why their loans doesn't cash flow? Because you discriminated against them previously, giving them loans in July and August. You're playing for them to fail. You're playing for their credit to be bad.
The Pigford cases in some respects were a victory, particularly in that they brought about public and official recognition of discriminatory actions. However, the victories of Pigford did not by any means win the war. Ryan Presley lost his 2 South Carolina farms in 2014, one a family farm that had been in his family for 100 years, and the other a farm he had purchased. Despite the rulings in the Pigford cases, Ryan dealt with the same issues of discrimination that acted as the catalyst for the Pigford cases.
Now this farm I'm actually leasing. In 2014, I lost both of my farms through foreclosures and Chapter 12 bankruptcy. Things that they said about me when they were denying me of crop insurance, that I don't have good farming practices, and I don't know what I'm doing. I always kept my fields in poor shape. Then I had these pictures. And I would always lose at the county level, win half the time at the state level, majority of the time I win at the federal level. I used to take a lot of pictures. I used to be really inspired to do a lot of stuff, like outside. Like I love the clouds, love taking pictures of clouds. I got stressed out. I really got stressed out really bad. The first thing that happened in 2009, January 2009, I went into the Farm Service Agency in Barnwell, South Carolina. And I wanted to apply for crop insurance. I inquired about it. The lady told me that I had to plant my crop and then come back, purchase the insurance. That's what I did. So that was in January. It was like January 6th or January 7th, 2009. And I finished planting my crops in April, May sometime. I had watermelons, okra, and cantaloupes. And when I came back to purchase the crop insurance, like she had told me, she said, "You're too late. The deadline was the 28th of February." The same agent. And I said, "Well, you know, I was in here in January and you told me I had to plant my crop first. I said, "Well, I still need to purchase the insurance." She said, "You cannot do it." You know, I'm trying not to get into any confrontation. I said, "Okay then," and walked out. And I thought I would make it. I thought everything would be okay, but I lost the majority of my crop. So I'm constantly fighting that battle, an uphill battle for that, to try to at least get my family farm back.
I'm 67 now. When I grew up, there were 300 family farmers in my community. Today, there are 3.
In my hometown, there was approximately 200, and I think that I'm the only one left, a viable farmer.
I am the 3rd generation of a black farmer. My daddy died in 1983. I took over the farm in 84. In 1984, we had approximately 200 black farmers in my county. Today, we have less than 10.
These troublesome truths are not going on without a fight. Organizations such as Rural Coalition and National Family Farm Coalition and their partner organizations are valiantly battling to bring greater justice to our food systems.
To date, right now, more than $3 billion has gone back to families that suffer discrimination. It in no way makes up for all the losses that they did have, but it is, it's something to go back to the families.
Changing practices and mindsets that are so entrenched within the system is no easy feat. Eliminating discriminatory practices is a long, hard battle, one which we must fight together.
To the people that have gone through the things that I've gone through, I want them to know that, that doesn't mean that you did anything wrong, and it doesn't mean that you're going to fail. The only reason somebody fails at something is because they stop trying.
People worry about me working all the time, but I like what I do. So it don't bother me.
Hey!